Thank you for your talk, Allie. You're settling down now?
Oh, yes. I feel like it just keeps getting more crazy.
That's good. So this weekend was on the Quantum School of Zen schedule was a ceremony, all day Saturday and into Sunday as well, was planned, remembering our founding teacher. So we call it the Founders' Day ceremony. And it had to be canceled because the head temple, which was going to host this ceremony, had a COVID outbreak. So what I would like to do now, instead of giving a talk, is to read a remembrance of Zen Master Seung Sahn that I wrote shortly after his death on November 30th, 2004, and that was published in Buddha Dharma magazine. And so at least to do that much for Founders Day. I remember him best bowing. For years, he rose at 3 a.m. to do 500 prostrations before the regular 108 with the group at morning practice. He was a sturdy figure in his short gray bowing robe. His arms swung freely, both on the descent and the ascent. His forehead pressed against the mat for a precise moment before he rocked forward on his hands to rise. Much bowing, your center becomes stronger, stronger, stronger. Once, before a retreat in Boulder, I asked him what he did when he sat. He told me he recited the great Dharani over and over, very fast, one repetition per breath, because we chanted it earlier in practice. Then your mind is like a washing machine on spin cycle, moving very fast. All the dirty water goes out, but the center is not moving. As you know, the great Dharani, or Dharani of great compassion, is a very long mantra, about 450 syllables. One breath. I asked him if he actually pronounced, subvocalized every syllable. He said he perceived every syllable, moment to moment. He was fond of the conceit that moments of perception, this is actually in Buddhist psychology, that moments of perception go by at what turns out to be about the same fraction per second rate that frames of film must be projected in order to create the illusion of motion. He loved movies, especially westerns and other action films. Once during a Kwang interview, stomach, you must become a Western action hero. He liked the movie E.T. because the children and the alien were so compassionate to each other. But he thought the title character fell short of being a true bodhisattva because he was so preoccupied with going home. He himself was always on the road. By the early 1980s, he had Zen centers dotting the country, several in Europe and Asia. He visited them all regularly. His energy was very strong during the 80s, perhaps due to special practices he did then. Once when he came to Kansas, he stayed at our house in a downstairs guest room. That night, my wife and I, in bed upstairs, listened to blood-curdling yells coming from his room. When dawn broke, we went downstairs and found him in the kitchen, bags packed and ready to be driven to the airport, drinking tea and smiling. Many demons attacked last night, but I all drive away. He explained the various Taoist yells he had used, and how the feng shui of our town and the room on the side of the hill under the pine tree attracted demons. These demons would come down from the university, so it's perfectly credible. Demons and restless spirits. My wife, fearing her old teacher had lost his way, said, "Those demons are all in your mind, Sansanim." As he opened the car door, he waved his stick and shouted up to her, "Yeah, you're correct. All in the mind. But you must understand this mind." He learned English when he came to this country in 1972 at the age of 40. At the age of 21, he had received Dharma transmission from the brilliant, eccentric Kwang and went on to direct temples both in Korea and Japan. Kwang had told him, "I am the flower, you are the bee. You must spread this teaching throughout the whole world." So, in 1972, he landed in Providence, Rhode Island, and began living and teaching with a group of Brown University students who had found out that a Zen master was working in the local laundromat. Even though he took English classes at Harvard, his use of the language was always shaped by the directness and urgency of his Zen teaching. What are you? You don't know. So only go straight, don't know, always, everywhere. This don't know epitomized his style, a masterful use of colloquial English to translate, in this case, the Chinese wuxin, no mind, and to bring it to life, manifesting the concept and instilling it rather than simply explaining it. He taught us to breathe in, what am I? And breathe out, don't know. It became, for many of us, certainly for me, the great question. He was also always telling us, just do it, years before Nike picked up the phrase. And don't make anything, and put it all down, and try for 10,000 years, nonstop. And these were not presented as slogans, but as sincere admonitions, always in the moment, no matter how often repeated. He was a master storyteller and delivered much of his teaching through stories, gesticulating and mugging his way through tall Buddhist tales and becoming in turn a wise old woman, a proud but naive sutra master, a bewildered Manjushri, a stern Namchan killing the cat. And many of these stories can be found in his books, Dropping Ashes on the Buddha, Compass of Zen. But of course it was his living presence that kept us enthralled. It was not just his energy. There was a dearness about him in everything he did, but especially when he spoke. Interviews with him were warm and clear, water flowing into water, as Barbara Rhodes, Zen Master Seung once put it. My first retreat with him in 1978 was a 3-day Kido, a chanting retreat at a house on the coast at Big Sur. I helped him build an altar out of scrap lumber, and he placed on it a beautiful, delicate, ornate golden statue of Kuan Yin. When someone asked him why we were using such an elaborate statue for the retreat instead of a plain Buddha, he replied, Kuan Yin made herself beautiful to help all beings. So we followed the standard retreat schedule, early morning until late evening. But instead of sitting, we chanted Kwan Seung Bosal for hours on end, each of us equipped with a percussion instrument. Sansanim setting the tempo with a huge moktak. Assigned to clean his room, during one of the breaks I went in and found him not resting, but listening intently to a tape recording of the previous session, moving his lips. His talks during that retreat were all about the bodhisattva of compassion and the spirit of compassion as the heart of Zen practice. When you are thinking, your mind and my mind are different. When you are not thinking, Your mind and my mind are the same. That is Zen mind. The name for that is Kwang great love, great compassion, the great bodhisattva way. He believed in chanting as the easiest form of practice and the best form of together action. That might explain the first half hour of practice that you witnessed if you're new. His own chanting was like a great bell. It seemed to reverberate directly from his gut into ours, and he was absolutely still when he chanted. When he was 21 years old, disenchanted with politics and philosophy, he undertook a 100-day solar retreat in the mountains, chanting with a moktak 20 hours a day, taking cold baths at night in the stream, and eating only pine needles. At the end of the retreat, he wrote this poem. The road at the bottom of Wongok Mountain is not the present road. The man climbing with his backpack is not a man of the past. Dok, dok, his footsteps transfix past and present. Crows out of a tree, caw, caw, caw. You can still visit Wongok Mountain and see the hermitage where he did that retreat. His diet on that retreat may have given him the diabetes he had to cope with the rest of his life. It did not slow him down. Rather, it was simply another vehicle for his teaching. He always spoke of his body as a rental car, and he would say that when something is ripe, it will soon be rotten. Towards the end of his life, he was given the title Daejongsa, Great Elder Teacher, the highest title bestowed in the Chogye order. When he was presented with the accoutrements of this position, he said, "This whisk is heavy." The last time I heard him teach was at a precept ceremony, Kansas Zen Center. He told two stories of precept ceremonies to illustrate the importance of correct direction, knowing when the precepts are open and when they are closed. First, he told the story of Hei Chung, a precept-keeping monk who would not even uproot grass in order to save his own life and was made national teacher by the emperor in recognition of his virtue. Then he told the story of Nam Chan killing the cat, a kongan that has opened many Zen students' minds. When he came to the part of the story where Joju puts his sandals on his head, he took the brass handbell from the table and put it on his head. Balancing it there, he looked at the Sangha serenely and said, "So, keep precepts, become national teacher. Break precepts, become great Zen master. Which one do you like?" He always left us with a question. But when Subong Sanem, his Dharma heir, who died in 1994, asked him, "What is the shortcut to Zen?" he answered, "Not for me." This was how he lived his life, not for himself, but for all beings. The poem on the precepts certificate reads, "Good and evil have no self-nature. Holy and unholy are empty names. In front of the door is the land of stillness and light. Spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." Thank you very much. We don't have time for questions, so we'll stop this right here. Thank you again.